First of all, welcome. Thank you for coming on this hot and stuffy night, and this room isn't a whole lot much better, but we're going to make do. We'll make do. I've had the pleasure of knowing Allison for about 14 or 15 years. We were just trying to count it up. And so I have a very special relationship with her that's personal before she decided to take this quest on. And I'm so proud of her, I can't even begin to say. There are no words. Don has known her a shorter period of time, but celebrates the fact that she's so bright and so incredibly dynamic and a quick study that he has fallen in love with her just as I did. So we would like for you to meet Allison Gustafson, who's running for state representative from the 4th Essex District.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy, for that wonderful introduction. Absolutely. And the love is definitely mutual on both fronts, actually, on both counts. And I'm just so grateful to you, to Nancy and Don, for bringing us all together here today for this event. I'm so thrilled that you guys all took time out of your busy weeks. I know life is busy and summers are even busier to be here. So that speaks volumes. So thank you so much for that. And also wanted to express my appreciation for Petros here from Ithaki for their warm hospitality this evening. We've all been enjoying the hors d'oeuvres and just the space, and I'm just grateful for how it all came together. So thank you. So I am Allison Gustafson, and it is great to be here at Ithaki, actually, where we've had so many memorable family dinners. I actually met my future in-laws here at Ithaki for Mark's brother's wedding rehearsal dinner. And I met Nancy that night too, Nancy and Jim. So this place has a lot of special memories associated with it. We now live, Mark was born and raised in Ipswich, and we now live in Manchester with our son Matthew and our daughter Sonia. And I'm running for state representative for these towns, for Ipswich, Manchester, Hamilton, Wenham, Rowley, and Topsfield, because now, more than ever, we really need people at every level of representative government who take initiative. We need to look not only at where we are and how we got here, but at where we're going and how we're going to get there. It's time. And how we're going to get there together, actually, is the main point. That's the point I really want to make here in this speech. It's time. It's time for proactive leadership and new energy to address the issues that matter to all of us: education, our environment, and our economic and fiscal well-being. We've had almost 20 years with our current representative, and this is not a lifetime appointment. I think it's time for a change, because when we make room for new leaders, their fresh perspective reveals new ways of tackling challenges. It's time to identify a vision for our future and then create and follow a plan for achieving it. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I have a loud voice that serves me well most of the time, but not all the time. We all know that we are living in extraordinarily precarious times. I believe that we're in the midst of a major transition, unique in our history, that could really pave the way for a new culture of participatory government and community vitality, but only if we choose to make it so. We will no longer simply vote in leaders and then return to our everyday lives. And I want to know if anybody even remembers what our everyday life actually felt like, because I can't remember in the rabbit hole. But we will instead elect leaders who encourage us to view challenges and opportunities, view challenges as opportunities, to look beyond the status quo, to innovate, and therefore thrive. So I'm stepping into this new leadership role because I feel wholeheartedly that it's not enough to raise our children to be prepared for the world, that we must also raise the world to be worthy of our children. That's it. That's the whole point. I'm a mother, I've been a teacher, I've managed a small business, and I've been a community organizer. And if the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, then my path to this particular moment could best be described as a scenic route. Yeah. But I'm absolutely certain that the route has prepared me for this role in ways that I really never could have appreciated all along the way. So after graduating from the University of Michigan, I moved to Prague to teach English, and then to New York City to earn my master's degree in English literature at NYU. And then there was 9/11. And that blue skied morning as I emerged from the subway and started to walk towards my office building, which was right next door to the World Trade Center. The second plane pierced the tower right above my head like a balloon at the end of a string. So throughout the subsequent ordeal, There were so many unforgettable moments of human contact. A young woman grabbed my arm as we began our run down Broadway. A man reached over and hoisted me onto the side of the Brooklyn Bridge. An old woman who embraced me when I finally collapsed onto the bus when I was safely back in Brooklyn. And that day I learned firsthand that when the ordinary really gives way to the extraordinary, as humans we have an innate yearning to connect, to work together, and to help each other. So the events of that day also caused me to question, what did meaningful work actually look like, both in general and for me? In the face of the hatred that was embedded in those attacks and their aftermath, what could I, Allison, do? So I decided education was the antidote to fear. As a society, we could respond to hate with hate, or we could prepare our children to become compassionate global citizens with the skills necessary to tackle complex issues. I enrolled in a multicultural education certification program and spent a year teaching in Cairo, Egypt, teaching 6th grade. And when I came home to complete the program, I met Mark and we both continued to pursue our careers as teachers. Which brings me finally to the North Shore, where we've chosen to make our home together. When our daughter Sonia was 2 months old, I took over managing the family business, a commercial industrial office building in Peabody. The next 10 years became a crash course in accounting, business management, negotiation, tenant relations, and building systems maintenance. We had our second child, Matthew, and the joys and challenges of a hectic family life unfolded within our beautiful North Shore community, with its charming towns, farm stands, beaches, and seafood, and an incredible network of friends to go along with it. I think this is a feeling I think many of you share, which is why so many of us, so many people who grow up here on the North Shore either never leave or come back to raise their families. How could you not? So our lives continue to hum along until the 2016 election, which was another jarring, disorienting, whiplash-inducing call to reevaluate. In the face of this unfathomable turn of events, I asked myself again, what could I, Allison, actually do? So shortly after that election, a group of former congressional staffers got together and drafted a guide for grassroots resistance to the new administration's agenda. And it was practical and inspiring, and after only a few very short moments of deliberation, I decided to create Essex County No. 6 Indivisible as a new and vigorous forum for civic engagement in our community. Our group started with 12 people in my living room, and under my leadership grew to over 1,000 people, 1,000 active members. We were very proud to be part of a national movement that was largely credited with stopping Trump care. And many members had never been politically active before, but have now woven political involvement into the fabric of their everyday lives. A number of them actually assumed leadership roles for the group when I decided to run for office, and they're now taking the group in exciting new directions under the newly rebranded North Shore Indivisible, which is a lot easier to say than my original title, which, had I known how big it was going to get, I probably would have tightened that up a little bit. So, if last year was about resistance, this year it's about representation. I'm running for state representative because it's time. It's time to thank the 20-year incumbent for his service to the community. I have every reason to believe that that service was sincere, but this isn't the same landscape that it was in the 90s and early 2000s, and we need much more than that. We need to not only work around the edges of problems, but to dig deep into their roots and work together to explore fundamentally new approaches to addressing them. This is a moment that requires initiative, creativity, new energy, fresh perspectives, sustained effort, and the ability to listen and respond as well as the willingness to lead with vision. I think it's time to recognize that such a vision must include educational excellence at every level for all children. This is not only a moral imperative, but it's in the best interest of all Massachusetts communities. It's been 25 years since education reform, and it's time to take a close look at the approach and priorities regarding education in Massachusetts. Everywhere I've gone, from meetings with superintendents to school committee members to local groups of concerned parents, I've just heard the same sense of desperation across the board. Please fix the Chapter 70 funding formula for educational funding. It's incomprehensible, unfair, and drastically overdue for an overhaul. The funding formula has plagued our schools and shortchanged our children for far too long. It just created inequity, and many towns are being pushed closer and closer to the brink. So in exploring opportunities for solutions, I believe we really should consider partnerships whereby endowed universities invest in public education, where we expand access to free early childhood education, implement screenings to mitigate the heartache and cost associated with late discovery of learning disabilities, we can and must do better here in Massachusetts, where we've always been leaders. We are the first public library, the first public school. We're the first to provide universal health care. I think it's time to think big and move beyond our state of chronic short-termism if we want to see this district thrive from its classrooms to its clam flats. Which brings me to climate change. It's real.
Not happening.
No, it's real. It really is.
Chinese folks, right?
Yeah,
Fake
you know,
news.
that's it. Fake news. No, I'm here to tell you that it's real. It's here, and it's the defining issue of our generation. But here's the thing, it's not too late. I really think we can either keep kicking the can down the road until the road is completely flooded and littered with cans, or we can look squarely at what we're facing and come to terms with the reality that we're at a turning point in society in general and in our coastal community here in particular. We're on the front lines, and we're heading towards many climate-related challenges in the coming decades, including rising sea levels, coastal flooding, summer droughts, extreme temperatures and storms, warming oceans, and ocean acidification. Our waters in New England, in fact, are warming faster than most of the rest of the world, which will just have detrimental impacts across the board in terms of our fishing industries, lobster, clamming, as all the fish move north to seek cooler temperatures. So without getting too much into the weeds, literally and figuratively, I think we have here in our Commonwealth and in our district an extraordinary wealth of expertise, research, and recommendations for how to comprehensively address these challenges and prevent an enormous human, environmental, and financial toll. If we can muster the political will to adopt climate-smart planning and policy, we can protect our homes, our buildings, our infrastructure, our businesses, our local economy, and our way of life. The need for environmental protection is abundantly clear here in Ipswich, where Cranes Beach, one of the fastest eroding in New England, draws over 250,000 people per year. Hundreds of local families depend directly on clamming for their livelihood, and clams from all over the country come here to be processed in order to bear the iconic Ipswich name. So it's really a multi-million-dollar industry, and the health of the Ipswich economy is directly tied to the health of our coastal areas. So I think we must engage in a multi-pronged, comprehensive approach to climate change and environmental protection, mitigating our impact, managing the consequences, and taking full advantage of the $1.4 billion bond bill to build a more resilient Commonwealth. There are a few key elements of a broader plan that I would advocate for as stated. Number one, to achieve, can you still hear me? To achieve the substantial cuts in our carbon emissions that most scientists agree that we must make, a carbon tax is absolutely necessary. The government under this administration is still beholden to fossil fuels, so it's up to us at the state and local levels to make it happen. The carbon tax isn't really a tax, it's a fee-based system that places a fee on fossil fuels as they come into the Commonwealth and then sends a check to every household and business from that fee, with a portion set aside to fund green infrastructure, investments in transportation, clean energy, and protection against climate change in general. And studies show that in just 20 years, such a system could reduce carbon emissions to 50% of the 1990 levels, while adding 2.8 million jobs to the American economy. That's number one, carbon tax. Number two, we must confront the fact that failing infrastructures and the fact that we have failing infrastructures and the general need throughout the district for major infrastructural investments. In so doing, all towns should engage with the Municipal Vulnerability Program, and I'd really like to help all the towns do this, to determine priorities with climate change in mind. We need to shore up our old gray sort of concrete and cement infrastructures where necessary, so improving undersized culverts and bridges and evaluating the efficacy of dams. But we also need to favor green and nature-based infrastructural solutions as well, which can often be more resilient, more effective, and provide a range of co-benefits in addition to providing comparable levels of protection. And number three, we must institute comprehensive water resource management, including regional strategies for stormwater, wastewater, and public drinking water. A regional approach to water withdrawal has the capacity to increase resiliency far into the future. The fact that this is the way we've always done it with water withdrawals is almost an embarrassingly short-sighted attitude. Like so many other issues, water only gets attention when it's scarce or dangerously abundant, and it falls off the radar as soon as droughts or floods subside. To institute strong, effective policies, our leaders must pay sustained attention to the quiet, creeping crisis that is our water issue and our environment in general. My opponent's 64% rating from the Mass Autobahn really isn't going to cut it. And I'm deeply committed to this issue, as you can tell, and extremely proud to have earned the endorsement of the Massachusetts Sierra Club. I believe with leadership, vision, and creative partnerships, our coastal community really has the opportunity to become a model for the state and nation in terms of climate adaptation and resiliency. Here in Massachusetts, we have benefited from a legacy of bold investments for so long. Our deepest problems really have always been the catalyst for innovation. By protecting our assets, investing in low emissions industries, workforce training, renewable energies, retrofitting, water resource management, energy storage, electric vehicles, and even ecotourism, we will demonstrate unequivocally that an investment in our environment is an investment in the economy. Such bold measures have already borne out in fact what they propose in theory. The Life Sciences Initiative, for example, is an innovative program of significant strategic investments that added thousands of jobs over a 10-year period across the economic spectrum. It made Massachusetts a global leader in this growing and highly paid sector. But those kinds of programs really require leaders who anticipate growth opportunities and not only react to them. The incumbent voted against this initiative when it was first proposed in 2000, when it was first adopted actually in 2008, but then recently voted to support its renewal after he saw its benefits. I think we should be grateful that others didn't follow his lead, or we really would have missed out on an enormous economic opportunity. The life sciences industry isn't the only area of legislation where my opponent has missed the mark, in my opinion. In general, he's really used his legislative power very differently than I would. For example, I'm not sure how many times this needs to be said, but we need to unapologetically, loudly, and consistently support common sense gun reform. These regulations don't violate our freedoms any more than requiring seatbelts in swimming pools. Thank you. Seatbelts in cars and fences around swimming pools violates our freedoms to drive and swim. Gun safety is a nonpartisan public health issue and should be treated as such. My opponent has long enjoyed an A rating from the NRA, and I would work hard every day instead to receive an A rating from the families of this district. Now, more than ever, really more than any time in the last 45 years, we need to unconditionally defend every woman's right to make her own reproductive health care decisions. I know that's appalling that it needs to be said, but it's true. We have to ensure that access to affordable reproductive health care, education, and contraception are non-negotiable and universal. My opponent voted in favor of abstinence-only sex education, mandatory waiting periods for abortions, and budget cuts for family screening, family planning services that included health care screenings. It's really no wonder that he earned a very poor rating from Planned Parenthood, whose endorsement I'm also very proud to earn. So, thank you. In general, I believe that a healthy society asks itself critical questions and engages with complex issues in a mature and civil manner. I'm running for this office because I believe that we are living in extraordinary times that call for each of us to bring our skills and gifts and our talents directly into the civic process itself. I think true progress happens, and only happens, I would say, when people engage with ideas in a space of mutual respect and actually curiosity. I think we live in a spectacular district, and our towns are rightfully proud of their rich history. I think it's time to elect a new leader who will work for you and with you every day on behalf of a future of which all of us can be equally proud. And I could go on for hours. I know it's warm in here, but I really want to take your questions. Following those questions, I would be happy to continue to speak with you individually. I know it's a lot to cram into a short speech, but this is also really meant to be an ongoing conversation. This is just the first of what I hope will be a months-long and years-long dialogue. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me with questions and comments and thoughts and ideas. And I look forward to earning your support and your vote, and most of all, your participation. Thank you.
Yes.